From the moment Pablo Ruiz Picasso first held a pencil, his world narrowed to a single, magnetic center, the act of drawing. Long before fame, exhibitions, or artistic revolutions, there was simply a small boy in Málaga who seemed to breathe line and shadow with the same ease other children learned to speak. His earliest memories were filled with the rustle of sketchbook pages and the scent of oil paint drying in his father's studio, a place where silence held a kind of sacred weight and where observation was treated as both discipline and revelation. In this environment, Picasso absorbed not only basic techniques but an entire way of seeing, patient, attentive, and altogether different from the hurried glance of ordinary life. His father, José Ruiz Blasco, was a painter and professor of academic art, known for his meticulous studies of birds and still lives. He recognized his son's unusual focus almost immediately. The child did not doodle as others did, he constructed. He searched for accuracy, for proportion, for the hidden geometry beneath feathers, faces, and fruit bowls. José began teaching him formally before he could fully write, guiding his hand through exercises that students twice his age struggled to complete, shading from a single light source, understanding vanishing points, copying plaster casts of ancient sculptures. Where others needed months to grasp the basics, Picasso absorbed concepts in days. By 7, he was producing compositions that startled anyone who saw them. His still lives had a weight to them, apples that seemed to rest firmly on a wooden table, glass bottles that caught light with calculated precision. His portraits revealed an awareness of human mood and psychology uncommon in a child. He captured not only likeness but a faint suggestion of inner life, something no teacher could fully explain. Visitors to the Ruiz household often assumed the father had retouched the pictures. José, proud yet inwardly challenged, knew the opposite was true. He could already see his son's ability surpassing his own. What made Picasso extraordinary in these early years was not merely technique but the restlessness with which he approached every task. He replicated a subject faithfully once, twice, perhaps 3 times, then abruptly broke away, twisting the form, heightening a color, exaggerating a line, as if reality were only a starting point. He wanted to extract the power behind appearances. When studying pigeons, a familiar subject in his father's work, young Pablo began simplifying their curves, flattening perspective, or emphasizing the arc of a wing to convey motion, instinctively slipping toward abstraction long before he understood the term. His father watched this evolution with a mix of amazement and unease. The boy's hunger for experimentation was not learned, it erupted from within, unstoppable and often disobedient to academic expectations. Picasso's earliest surviving works show this dual nature, precise draftsmanship intertwined with a desire to reshape what he saw. A portrait of his sister Lola reveals careful detail in her eyes and hair, yet the background is an unusual blend of tones, chosen more for emotional effect than realism. A study of a pigeon includes lines that break rhythmically at the edges, hinting at movement rather than capturing a static bird. Even the simple drawings he made while watching the streets of Málaga, horses pulling carts, beggars resting in doorways, women carrying baskets, carry subtle distortions that strengthen narrative force. His parents soon understood that ordinary schooling would not restrain or redirect his growing obsession. Lessons bored him. He drew on margins, on slates, on scraps of paper, sometimes on the surfaces of household furniture when no sheet was within reach. The routine of regular classes felt unbearably slow to a child who could lose himself for hours in observing the folds of a curtain or the muscular tension of a horse's leg. Recognizing the futility of insisting on normal academic progress, José devoted increasing time to cultivating his son's talent, arranging for him to attend specialized art instruction far earlier than was typical. The family's move to A Coruña in the early 1890s intensified the boy's progress. There, Picasso gained access to new landscapes, new faces, and a calmer environment suited for study. He painted the sea with an attention that bordered on reverence, noting the subtle shifts of green and gray along the northern coast, experimenting with the interplay of reflection and shadow. He drew fishermen in their heavy coats, capturing the fatigue etched into their expressions with an intensity beyond his years. Even melancholy scenes, sick children, quiet corners of the city, found their way into his notebooks, foreshadowing the emotional sensitivity that would later define his blue period. At 13, a pivotal moment arrived. José, astonished by a rendering of a dead pigeon painted by his son with astonishing realism and gravity, laid down his own brushes and announced that he would no longer paint. Whether this gesture was literal or symbolic, it marked the recognition that the student had surpassed the teacher. It was also the moment Picasso's career accelerated irreversibly. The next phase of his training unfolded in Barcelona, where he entered the prestigious La Llotja School of Fine Arts. His admission was exceptional. While most students studied for months to pass the entrance exam, Picasso completed it in a single day, an achievement that astonished faculty and cemented his reputation as a prodigy. Yet academic rigor, though useful, soon felt too restrictive. Picasso devoured the curriculum quickly, absorbing everything from anatomical studies to classical sculpture, only to feel constrained by the insistence on tradition. Already, the young artist burned with a desire to redefine the rules rather than obey them. Barcelona also exposed him to a richer cultural landscape, bohemian cafes, lively intellectual debates, and the beginnings of modernism in Catalonia. He spent evenings sketching in Els Quatre Gats, an artist's gathering place, where he observed eccentric personalities, performers, and fellow painters. These scenes became fuel for his evolving style, faces split into angles, emotions conveyed with abrupt strokes, the world depicted not as it appeared but as it felt. This willingness to break form at an age when most students were still perfecting classical drawing signaled the trajectory his career would take, always forward. Always against expectation. By 17, Picasso's life in Madrid deepened his exposure to the old masters. At the Prado Museum he studied Velázquez, El Greco, and Goya, copying their works with skill but also dissecting their structural secrets. He admired them yet understood instinctively that imitation alone was insufficient. Each great painter before him had expanded the boundaries of representation, he would do the same. Madrid also sharpened his awareness of human suffering, poverty, and psychological tension, subjects he recorded in notebooks filled with street figures, beggars, and faces lined by hardship. These sketches are early proof of the empathy and social sensitivity that would later permeate his major periods. Throughout these formative years, one pattern remained constant: nothing he learned stayed fixed. Every new technique became a stepping stone to the next experiment. Proportion gave way to distortion, realism gave way to expressive exaggeration, the smooth continuity of classical perspective would eventually fracture into the angular planes of cubism. The seeds of his later revolutions, blue period introspection, rose period warmth, African-influenced forms, cubist disassembly, surrealist reinvention, were all present in faint outlines before he reached adulthood. Picasso's childhood and adolescence were not just years of precocious talent but a continuous rehearsal for the transformations to come. His art evolved with an urgency that suggested an inner compulsion, as though he were racing against an invisible clock. Every sketch, every oil study, every hurriedly drawn figure on a cafe napkin pushed him closer to breaking away from convention entirely. By the time he stepped into the Parisian art world at the turn of the century, he arrived not as a hopeful student but as an artist already shaped by 2 decades of relentless practice, experimentation, and intellectual hunger. The brilliance of his early years had prepared him for the upheavals he would soon create, upheavals that would redefine modern art at its roots. What began with a child's fascination for line and form evolved into a lifelong pursuit of transformation, destruction, and rebirth. In those early works, tight, precise, exploratory, daring, you can trace the entire arc of his future, the constant reinvention, the refusal to repeat himself, the belief that art must be renewed ceaselessly. Picasso's genius did not appear suddenly in adulthood, it was forged slowly, intensely, and visibly in the hands of a boy who seemed destined from the start to reshape the world of art.